Welcome to another Summer Blue Room Weekly. It's me, it's Pete, it's Warren, and we're here to talk about something that's happened positively for one of our players. A bit of a stalwart at Everton now, which is a strange thing to say because he still looks about 12 years old. But Jordan Pickford, a hero for England in the penalty shootout against Switzerland last night, um, seems to be, to me, he's finally getting the praise he deserves. I don't know what you guys think here. I'll come to you first on this, Pete, because you've been raving about him, haven't you? Putting all pictures of him and all that on your social media. Um, Look, I mean, it's no secret that we've pretty much adored Pickford since he's been at Everton. It's what getting towards 8 years now that he's been, which I think is remarkable for a world class goalkeeper to be at our football club, given the situation we've been going through. But that performance, well, particularly he didn't have to really do much, did he, in the game itself? But to save that penalty just seems to have the Midas touch for England when you think about the history of how poor they've been at penalties.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat last night. He saved 4 out of 14 he's faced in shootouts, and I think out of the previous 32, there'd only been two penalties saved by however many other goalkeepers is included in that particular stat. So I think he's proven himself time and time again in an England shirt and an Everton shirt. I think this really weird, lazy narrative that seems to pop out every now and again is that he's a different player for England, and he's somehow ups his game. I think he's been absolutely superb for Everton for years. Obviously, I think he's won Player of the Season 3 years on the bounce. I think the lad's top class. I think without Jordan Pickford, we wouldn't be in the Premier League now. And to be honest, I think without Jordan Pickford, it's questionable as to whether we'd still exist as a football club. It's been that important for us to stay in the Premier League over these last few years. So, yeah, I think there's still a strange, odd media narrative surrounding him. Certainly with the commentators and certain people in the press who just seem like they're itching for him to make a mistake. But as it happens, up till now, touch wood, he hasn't really dropped any clangers. I mean, at some point, every goalkeeper makes mistakes. I'm sure one will come, but I think that he's more than earned the right to make the odd clanger if one does happen to come. Because I think he's been absolutely superb for England, especially in these high pressure situations like the penalty shootouts.
What do you think about that, Warren, with him, and what it is that he doesn't appease to many fans? Look, we're in a bit of our own little bubble, aren't we, as Evertonians with him, and how much we see him, how much we talk about him. But it does seem there what Pete was hinting at, that if he makes the slightest mistake, you know he's going to get absolutely slated by everybody in this country. I'm not entirely sure what this is because, as far as I can see, he's a working class lad. He's loved being at Everton because of where he lives. I think we had a chat earlier in the season about why, if you're a top class goalkeeper, would you want to stay at Everton? And the conclusion most of us come to is because he just likes living here. He just enjoys it. He's just a normal fella. You don't see him doing so much of the younger player vibes about going out all the time. You're seeing him on the lash. You're seeing him all over the place and getting pissed and arguing with managers and stuff like that. I think that's quite ironic, given when you see him on the pitch, you could see him that would probably reflect on what you see from the lad on the pitch at times when he's quite extravagant. But what's your feeling in all this? The way in which he's looked upon by everybody else.
Well, I should caveat it by starting with I think the England goalkeeper, or as the England number one goalkeeping position, has been a much discussed, much debated, probably more focus on it than any other position, I'd say, in that England team. I remember as far back as when David Seaman, David James. It's always a discussion of hot topics. So it's nothing new there in terms of what the arguments, debates around them. And I think there is an element of he plays for Everton. There is an element of that. I think it's an easy target, the goalkeeping position as well. And people have had to say for years now about how they feel. I go on Twitter now. Every time he does something brilliant, which is quite regularly, I go on Twitter now and I go, I'd still rather have Ramsdale in goal. It was a bit of a wind up because that was the main thing,
Yeah.
wasn't it, all the time? And I just think that there is an element of because he plays for Everton, and if he was at what you would call a top six club, I don't think there'd be nearly. I mean, that last night was a joke when they were saying about how it's a long ball all the time from Pickford was one of the reasons for the detriment of England's play. I mean, that was just scapegoating at the highest level for me. That was ridiculous. It's nothing to do with Pickford's doing that because he's either being told to or because it's the only option to him at that time. Nothing to do with England's poor performances in the Euros down to because Pickford's playing a long one out of the back, which probably only happens about 6, 7 times a game anyway. And in terms of what you're saying there about why is he still at Everton, I mean, I think we've talked about it before. I think out of the clubs better than us who he could go to, I think everyone's pretty much set goalkeeper wise, or it cost him too much money to get him. So he's probably found it. He's probably found it where, do you know what? I'm regularly playing for England. I'm regularly playing for Everton. I don't need to rock the boat too much. And probably there is an element of that in there as well, that he just likes being at Everton. He likes being a focal point, which he is. I struggle with it a little bit because I just look at, Pete says it before, the stats. We're talking about a goalkeeper who's got the most clean sheets in tournament football for England. We're talking about a goalkeeper who, I think before Pete said 4 in 14 he saved in shootouts. I think before that it was 2 in 40, something ridiculous like that. I think bar winning a major trophy, he has to be in that conversation of England's greatest ever goalkeepers. And that could be hyperbole from us because we're Evertonians and we're biased. But the stats back that up. There's no one else who's worn an England kit, an England shirt in goal for England that has performed as well as he has. I think another thing that possibly goes against him, and as biased as I am and as great as I think he is, I think he's been not just for England. I think for us, he's been our player of the year 3 times since he's been here, and that's quite right. I think when you look back at keepers, not just English goalkeepers, but keepers in Premier League history, you look at the likes of Peter Schmeichel, you look at the likes of players like that, and even Ederson at City, and I think they're outstanding goalkeepers. I really do. I think there's been some incredible goalkeepers down the years who've played. Van der Sar, for instance, another one I thought was just an absolutely fantastic, solid, dependable goalkeeper. And there's an argument to say he's maybe not in there at their level. And I think that's fair enough because for me, Peter Schmeichel, after Neville Southall, is probably the greatest keeper I've seen. It's the keeper I grew up
But
watching.
one, and does just on what you've listed there, does the fact that he's at Everton
Yeah,
deteriorate?
yeah. If he was at Chelsea, Man United, whatever, he wouldn't be talked about in the way he is. That's just high profile, big club bias.
Yeah.
That's there regardless. But he's not in. He maybe isn't in that same context. But in terms of what he's done for England, he is without a shadow of a doubt up there with England's greatest goalkeepers. And for me, I caught Southall sort of just after his peak. But Southall after his peak was still a world class goalkeeper.
Mm.
I'm not old enough to remember Gordon West and some of the other keepers we've had down the years, particularly in the 70s and 80s. I know we had Southall coming in the mid 80s to late 80s, early 90s, but I think it's a credible discussion now to say that after Neville Southall, he's Everton's greatest keeper. And I don't think that's hyperbole either. So I'm just so glad he's ours. And I think it's bewildering. It's bewildering why the English public don't seem to take him in like we do. And I think it's only gonna carry on until he moves to a quote unquote fashionable club.
Difficult for me to say this, given where I work, but the BBC commentary team was saying afterwards, I think it was Rio Ferdinand who said, "Oh, that's a great save," and then I think it was Micah Richards or Lineker himself who said, "Yeah, he should save that. It's a really easy save." And you're like, I don't care if the ball's hit straight at him. First of all, if you're taking a penalty 12 yards out, you shouldn't miss a penalty. I've always said that. No professional footballer should miss a penalty. You've got. I just don't think it should happen really, unless you've got a world class, top class goalkeeper who I think there's a lot of a mentality thing against certain goalkeepers. If you're stepping up to them and thinking this is tough for me mentally to actually strike the ball how I want to, pick the spot I want to put the ball into. And we've seen some amazing pens yesterday. By the way, every pen apart from the one that he saved seemed brilliant from every single player that was on the pitch. Um, but but with him, I think as well, like I don't want to go too full into this with the England sort of stereotypes you see from various fans across the country and whatnot. But I do think that may well have something to do with how they feel towards Pickford himself. I can imagine people that go even far enough as similar to what you've seen from the panel inside the game in Germany yesterday, that they look at it and think, you know what, it's an easy target for for us to say if he's made a mistake. They can hammer that tenfold above somebody who'd misplace a pass or somebody who'd give away a penalty. It'd be more like, right, focus us on Pickford here. That penalty's a mistake, blah blah blah. But let's home in on Jordan Pickford here. Um, the other thing I thought was really interesting about him as well was that when we first signed him, which is 2017, it wasn't 2016, was it? It was 2017 when we've got him. He's had 7 years with us now. You think about the best of his times at Everton. It's arguable who he'd performed best under in regards to goalkeeper. I think as well we've often criticised him, and this is again speaking very general about this, but as in early years and probably as short as maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, spoken of how childish, for want of a better word, but extravagant that he was. You've seen what he's done against Newcastle. He still does a lot of that sort of thing, doesn't he? Sort of like starts tapping his head or lying down on the ball and things like that. And look, it's great to look at. It's great fun to look at when he does it, and it works. and we've won a game. But there seems to me, Pete, he's turned 30 this year, which is remarkable, isn't it? You think how young we actually got him in, and he's still probably got the best of his years ahead of him with the way goalkeepers last till the late 30s at the very least. I didn't foresee him going to where he is now when we first signed him, and I think I'm pretty accurate in saying that. We've got a young lad from a side that was relegated to come to Everton and be their number one immediately. Look, tremendous talent. He was tipped from many people across football, but to bring somebody from Sunderland who'd gone down to Everton, who we were in a better position at that point. We were all excited because Machiri had just bought us and we were signing players from left, right, and centre. I think it went under the. It was quite an underlying thing that he came on board with. How difficult it would have been for him to start at Everton as the number one goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think was it Stecklenburg? Did he? He was the keeper before him, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah.
So he was taken over from Stecklenburg. Obviously, he was an older goalkeeper as well, almost like just a short term, a short term keeper just to keep things ticking over. And obviously, when Pickford comes in as the number one target, spends a lot of money on him. I mean, ironically, when you look at a lot of the signings that summer as well, he's probably, I can't think of any others who you can say were a real success at Everton Football Club. I think is it only Michael Keane probably left of that summer recruitment drive where we went out and seemed to sign everyone, and virtually all of them were a dud. So yeah, I think the longevity of Jordan Pickford is kind of summed up with that when you look at the amount of money we spent that summer, and he's probably pound for pound easily the best investment we made. I think he did come with a good big reputation from Sunderland, but like you say, I think the last few years he has developed, he has grown as not just a goalkeeper but as a person as well. I think it was probably under Carlo, wasn't it? After the whole thing with Van Dijk, when there was books of condolences getting posted in the Echo and all kinds, and I think that the witch hunt for Jordan Pickford was in full swing. I think that in terms of what the national media did to Jordan Pickford after that was absolutely disgraceful, and I think since then there's a number of pundits and a number of people who've had it in for him, and they've given any small opportunity to stick the boot in, they have. But as I say, anyone who watches Everton consistently and watches Jordan Pickford on a week-to-week basis will tell you that he's consistently not just one of our top performers, probably one of the best performers in the Premier League in his position. So I think Carlo Ancelotti has a lot to do with how he developed as well. Because after the Van Dijk incident, Carlo did take him out of the side a little bit. Didn't drop him. He just took him out of the limelight a little bit. Gave him a few, rotated the goalkeeper position a few times. Was it Jan Muker or was he earlier? Whoever the other goalkeeper was. Who was it? It wasn't Jan Muker. Who was it?
No, Jan Muker was about 15 years ago.
It was Olsen, wasn't it? Olsen, the one who ended up at
Villa.
Yeah,
Villa's number
yeah.
2 now, yeah.
Jan Muka was with Tim Howe, wasn't he? Yeah,
Moyes,
it was
yeah.
Olsen, and he came in and he sort of he gave Pickford that little bit of extra time to work on himself, and I think that was that was key for Pickford in terms of his development, because I think he was probably suffering with his confidence and with his mental health at that time as well. And in terms of the way he is slightly, say, erratic, or he's quite he's a character, isn't he? Is probably what you'd say, but it's the old cliche, isn't it? You've got to be a bit nuts to be a goalkeeper. To be a top goalkeeper anyway, you've got to have a little bit of a screw loose. So I think that yeah, I think Jordan Pickford is probably one of the most important players for Everton during this horrendous time.
Do you know what you're saying there about having the screw loose kind of thing, and that associates with goalkeepers since day dot, doesn't it? The interesting thing that I think you've just mentioned there has just come to my mind, thinking that you've actually got a professional footballer, enjoying their craft. And I
Yeah,
think that's what I see with him more. And when you see him playing, anytime he gets the ball, he loves to play passes out. He looks for something that's much more positive than just hoofing it up the pitch. Now, obviously for us, that's one of our go-to tools, the way Everton are, given we've got Calvert-Lewin up front and you want to win headers and flick-ons and all that sort of thing. That's very much a Sean Dyche badge on that. But Jordan Pickford's a brilliant passer of the ball. You know, the saving. Do you know, I was watching, you know, when they show the angle of the penalty that's being taken. He's only a little lad. I say little lad. He's only about 6 foot tall, which, you know, he's shorter than me. And, you know, you think as well, that's not a conventional goalkeeper. You mentioned Edison, big boy. Allison at Liverpool. Everybody like that. They've been big lads there who've succeeded as goalkeepers. Um, I want to move on with them in terms of the maturity that came about with them, because I still, like, he's reached the age of 30 now. Like I said at the start of the show, and he looks about 12 years old. I actually, I wouldn't put too much finer point on the maturity from him, because I think if you take out a lot of the extravagant things you see him do, the way in which he is as a person, I think if you take that away from him, you might well take away some of the skills that he is as a goalkeeper. I think that sort of personality is something that rubs off at a lot of people. Particularly, you know, when you look at him at the Gladys Street, he makes a save, he turns to the ground, and turns to the crowd and sort of makes a funny face or something like that. And look, I get that, like, you'll get many people in the crowd who's like, "What do you do, mate? Just get the ball out," or, you know, we're only drawing here, or we've still got to win this game. I think it must have happened in the derbies. In fact, most games you see him, he does that sort of thing. But on the flip side of that, when corners come in, and I think he's been stereotyped as being a bit of a joker, but when you see corners come in, when you see Everton under the cosh, you see him plenty of times screaming at everybody in and around the place. Somebody who's made a mistake defensively and it's gone out for a corner, you'll see him like rip them to shreds. And I think that's underestimated with somebody who, you know, has been in that place of he's having a laugh and things like that. And look, I can see when we're not being where we wanted to be in loads of relegation fights. You're going to look at Jordan Pickford and think, if he concedes a goal, but yet he smiled during that game, how dare he do that?
Mm.
I just don't think I don't think that changes anything he's like as the quality of a goalkeeper.
I think there's been a real evolution with them since when he first came. And I think there's a maturity to him now. There's a real maturity. And Pete's absolutely right when he says about the whole Van Dijk scenario and incident, what happened there, and Carlo worked wonders for him. But for me, there was a massive turning point in his Everton career, and we've referenced this before. It was after the Newcastle away game when we went 2-0 up, and then he saved the penalty, and we ended up losing the game 3-2. And there was a lot of questions about him at the time. A lot of questions. He's not good enough. Is he going to be our long-term keeper? And even on, you know, our show, on our pod, there was a lot of discussions with a lot of contributors about whether he was essential to being part of our squad. They even talk of selling him, you know, and recouping some of the money back. And ever since that moment, I think there's been a real change in him. I think that he's always got, like you alluded to there, Dave. He's got that natural. I don't want to say craziness, because I think I think it's overused, but that enthusiasm, like you said, that reaction that he has. It's like a natural reaction that he has when he makes a good save or when something happens, and he's not reserved in coming forward in those certain situations. But what I've noticed about him, and I don't know if this is correct, and I'm just making assumptions, I think in certain situations he can appear quite, I wouldn't say shy, but very calm, just very level-headed. And I watched his interview with ITV last night, and the way he spoke, he never raised his voice once. He never lowered his voice. He just spoke the whole same tone the whole time. And it got me thinking because I, for instance, regard myself as someone who is quite extrovert. I'll talk to anyone. I don't mind walking into a room and engaging in conversation. I don't get overawed by that. But in certain social situations, I'm actually very introverted. And I don't know whether there's a little bit of that with him. When he's on the pitch, he's this what we perceive as this bit of a madman and a bit of a bit bonkers at times and pulling faces. And there's that one that's doing the rounds at the minute when he did that sort of wide-eyed face, and someone's put a thing, oh, it's like when you put mascara on in the morning. It's that type of thing with him. But then off the pitch, he just seems very grounded, and I don't know whether that's to do with where he's from and how he's being brought up. I don't know. I'm just making an assumption. I could be completely wrong, but I think that side of him, that calmness side, I think that's come through a lot. And I think it's definitely showed in his game. I think since Carlo's got hold of him when he was in charge, there's definitely a difference in how he's a lot more authoritative in the box. He's a lot more commanding, but he doesn't do it. Of course, like every goalkeeper, he shouts and rants and raves at defenders. But tell me a goalkeeper who doesn't do that. Every goalkeeper does that. But he's a lot more calmer, and he just seems to slow things down a lot more. He doesn't seem to want to get it and quickly get rid of it. He slows it down, he assesses things, he lets people gather, and he lets the defence regroup and reshape. And I just think that he's really come of age recently, and I think the best is yet to come. Like you said, goalkeepers don't really reach the peak till 33, 34. He's 7 caps off, by the way, of breaking Gordon Banks's records. So, well, not Gordon Banks' record, because I know Peter Shilton's had the most caps for an English keeper, or is it David James, one of them. But if we're talking about Banks as the greatest ever English keeper, he's 7 caps off, overtaking Banks's records. And I think he'll easily do it. I think he'll easily do it. Whether Southgate is still the manager or not after this summer, I think that he will still be England's #1 based on how he's performed in these tournaments. And I think that is down to his maturity, his calmness, and the difference in him. I don't know what you feel about it, or I don't know if I could be talking completely wrong. People could be listening to this going, "What are you on about, mate?" But there just seems to be, in certain situations, he seems to be a completely different, I'd say, completely different personality than the one that first joined us. What was it, 2017?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. You think obviously people mature, well, hopefully matured. I certainly haven't matured since I was 21 years old. You know what I mean? I'm silly still at the age of 36, which is quite depressing towards some, to be honest with you. Certainly, my wife anyway. But yeah, I think that's sort of that general maturity, but he's done it in a very different way than most of us in life. Do you know what I mean? When you get to certain stages in your life and you're thinking, "Do you know what, I've got to get myself together here. I've got to do certain things, responsibilities, all the things you've got to do in life to sort of get by." Um, and I think Jordan Pickford sort of done that in his own way, which I think in many ways you look at him, that's something that he should be praised for a hell of a lot the way many other people are. If you get what I mean, because I do think he's an extrovert, only on the pitch, and I think that was an excellent point by Warren there, Pete, about off the pitch. When you do see him interviewed, he does seem like he goes back into his shell, and it's like, oh, a few words or so like that. I was in the editing his interview before for work, and it's like there's no specific line that he says that's particularly interesting. That's like him saying he's a boring fella, like, but to make me point on what I'm saying is he's quite calm. He's like, job done, let's crack on. The quite telling thing as well, I think many of our listeners won't specifically like me saying this, but the camaraderie with Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. Really interesting image, that one that I probably won't forget. And just to add to that, if you look at the papers and all the response media-wise, the focus was all on Trent Alexander-Arnold scoring that winning penalty. because I don't want to go too much of a tangent, but he was only put on by Gareth Southgate, who I don't rate as a manager whatsoever. He was only put on towards the end of that game to take that penalty, when many people would say he should probably be in the England starting 11. But no mention whatsoever of Jordan Pickford again getting England through a stage of international tournaments. And I mean, he's 30 now. The big question I want to ask you both, come to you first with this, Pete. Do you see him finish his career with Everton, or do you think he'd end up somewhere else? Because let's face it, like one said there, you get a peak keeper, and because he's been as good as he has for us, it may well be around now when he's peaking. It remains to be seen. But if he goes on till he's, let's say, 37, 38, 39, whatever it is, conventional goal like Van der Sar, I think you mentioned there, what before, he went to 40, I think, with Man United. Do you see him going all the way with us? I know that's a sort of wide, generic question, given it depends a lot on how Everton are.
Mm-hmm.
But he's Champions League quality. He's quite clearly world-class quality when you see what he's doing on the international scene. I'm surprised we still have him. I have to say, I'm surprised he stayed with us. Firstly, because our financial circumstances for the last few years have been absolutely dreadful. He's a sitting duck. I would think many sides would look at thinking, do you know what? We could probably get him for a hell of a lot cheaper. Much the same way people have looked at Calvert-Lewin and looked at players that we've had who they could probably go and get on the cheap. Obviously, with Branthwaite being at the top of that list this summer. With him, I've thought, it doesn't seem to me, and we don't know from just guessing outside of the four walls of Goodison, but I don't imagine him the type of player to have been sort of pushing for a move, to telling his agent, look, I need to get out of here. I want to go to a certain place. Dare to say it, I feel a little bit weird about that, because I only feel it's like a natural thing for a player who's succeeding at a level that they're better than, and he's certainly done that at Everton, in my opinion. So this is a rarity for me, which we began this show with, in saying that he's stayed at the club because of all different reasons. He might just like it where he lives, comfortable, family settled, all of that sort of thing. Pay the wage that he's always going to get. Signs a new contract, no problem at all. If you'd have told me that about an Everton player who's England's world-class goalkeeper before he came to us, I'd be thinking he's not staying at Everton long. Again, referring to Branthwaite, I'm sitting there thinking he's probably not going to stay at Everton long, given what he can go and do. Couldn't blame him for it. Everton's predicament, all that. We speak about that every week. Jordan Pickford's still Everton goalkeeper right now, has surprised me. But going forward, there's still something in me that if I was him and not an Evertonian, I'd be like, do you know what? I want a taste of that Champions League action. I want a taste of going on trying to win the Premier League. Do you feel that'll happen to him? Do you feel like he'll get that urge to go and do so, rather than hopefully not fighting for mid-table or relegation for Everton?
Well, I think it's all about who will be interested in him. As long as there's settled number ones, as Warren alluded to earlier on. I don't think any of the so-called big six are after a goalkeeper at the moment. I don't think he'd go to another Premier League club unless they were going to be able to offer him the Champions League football, which he probably deserves. So I think it's got to be down to who's willing to pay the money, because I don't think he would go for cheap. To be honest with you, I don't think Everton would let him go on the cheap. But I say it's all about who would come in for him, who needs a goalkeeper, and he wouldn't be wanting to go somewhere and being sat on the bench and potentially lose his England spot. He wants to be playing every week. So again, a lot of it depends on as well where Everton go in the next couple of years. I mean, he might even just have one eye on Brownlee Moore as well, thinking, well, he's been around for the whole construction of the place. I'm sure he wants to be the goalkeeper walking out and standing in front of that new Southend stand. So I think, I think there's a few things that would need to happen for Jordan Pickford to move, but I don't think I certainly don't think he's a type who'd be pushing for a move. And I also think there's not many teams who would A, be able to afford him, and B, who are in need of a top class goalkeeper at the moment.
We're in that stage though, one where we are talking about we have to sell, we have to sell, we have to sell. He's in that group, isn't he, of players that we have where we make a sufficient amount of money to sort various things out with the club until hopefully the new ownership is sorted out sooner rather than later. Firstly, I'm surprised you've not really heard many clubs coming in for him. You hear various whispers and bits and bobs on social media and in papers, and Man United won him because their goalkeeper's been crap since they got him in, and they've struggled since De Gea left, and various issues like that. I think Chelsea had a couple of keepers, haven't they, going through things. Arsenal as well. Ramsdale still being shouted as being England #1 rather than Pickford. It has that element of things that surprised me because similar to Brantwaite, I'd have thought a lot of clubs would think, do you know what? Everton are vulnerable here. We could go and get him for a certain price that's a lot less than what he's actually worth. Similar to what United have thrown in for Brantwaite. Um, it does surprise me that nobody's been in and about for him. But obviously, I take the point that Pete made there that most of the clubs above Everton, most of the clubs that are in and around the top 6 are quite settled in terms of the goalkeepers they've got. But just back to my initial question, do you see him finishing his career at Everton?
I think. Do you know where I think he'll end up back at Sunderland one day, won't he? I think
Yeah.
that's going to happen. I think that's
Like a Rooney back to us kind of thing.
Yeah, I think when he left there, and this, I mean, he's made no secret of the fact he's still a huge Sunderland fan. He was at the playoff, was it the playoff final, or he was at the Newcastle game, wasn't he? The FA Cup tie earlier this year, and I think that's natural. But I think as well, he's we've talked. I'm just looking while you were asking. Then I was just looking at the current Premier League goalkeepers, and everyone's pretty much settled. So unless he makes a sideways step, I don't know where he goes. And the top 6 clubs have all got their keepers already set. Anana at Man United, Ederson at City. I mean, even if he went somewhere like a Villa aren't going to get rid of Martinez because he's been brilliant for them. So I don't know who he goes to in the Premier League. The only option he'd have if he wanted to play higher level would be to go abroad. But I think, again, this is my assumption. This is not basing it off anything. I think he's got quite a young family and he probably doesn't want to uproot and probably doesn't want to unsettle his family and have to move. So it's maybe a little bit of that with them. And I think as well with goalkeepers, if you're an outfield player, you'll still play, 20, 30 plus games a season because there's always time for rotation, there's injuries, there's this, there's that. If you're a goalkeeper as a number 2, you might play 5 games all year, if that. And I think he probably looks at it as well and thinks, "Do you know what, I'm going to play." Because I don't recall Dyche being like having a cup keeper this year. I know he played Virginia at Crystal Palace, didn't he, that time? But I think pretty much every other time we've been in a cup competition, he started Pickford. So Pickford's getting 38 plus games a season every year. And he could be England goalkeeper for the next 5, 6 years. He could play the next 2 tournaments easily. And he's probably maybe thinking, "Do you know what? If I'm at Everton still, I'm going to play 40 games a season, so I'm going to be on top of my level. As soon as I don't, that's where I could falter in terms of the national team." And yeah, goalkeeper's one of them positions. It's not like you can just rotate each week. They talk about, don't they, how you want it to be consistent. And I think going back to Everton for a brief minute, the part of our success this season is we had a spine. We had the spine for the first time in probably 3 or 4 years. We've had a spine to our team. We've had Pickford as the goalkeeper, Tarkowski. He's trying to think of players now in the midfield, but do you know what I mean? Like we've had players, a consistent spine in the team, or Garner maybe, or
Yeah.
or whoever. And that's helped us. And I think if you've got a spine in your team, it's gonna help you as a team be more successful. And it's the point's been proven with the fact that we've had, what was it, the record amount of clean sheets this season. So he's probably looking at it thinking, "Do you know what? It's probably quite well set up for me here. So unless a mega offer comes in and unless a mega money offer comes in to a club like a Man United, he's not going to go to Newcastle, is he? So I don't know who else he goes to. So I think I can see him still being at Everton for at least the length of this contract he's on now. And if he keeps performing and they offer him another one, he could very well stay the rest of his time here. My concern is how hard was it to replace Neville Southall? I think
Yeah.
if he left for that big money offer, it's not just like replacing another midfield player or another winger, because there, in terms of goalkeepers, that there's a lot more available to your disposal. I'd find it. I'd worry. I'd worry that we wouldn't replace him because we had a number of keepers before we got to him, and we settled on Howard eventually in terms of a long. I know Dave, I won't say that too much about Howard with you, but we settled on a long-term replacement for Southall not until Howard came in 2006.
Martin for a bit as well, wasn't it? As well. I mean,
Yeah, but Martin was too short-term, wasn't he? He was only here
yeah,
for a little bit. And before then, we had Myra, we had Paul Gerrard, we had Richard Wright. We just couldn't settle on a keeper, and it's such a difficult position. Man United had it when Schmeichel left. They
many
didn't have
attempts
anything.
to have. Yeah.
Yeah, Man United have never really replaced Schmeichel, and I think I'd worry about that. And I think from Everton's point of view, they're probably a little bit of an eye on that too.
Mm.
We want to keep the stability. We've got to get us these clean sheets, what we were so brilliant at getting last season.
Just to finish away from Jordan Pickford there, to sort of edge towards the finish of this, we've actually we've actually signed some players across the summer as well. I know we touched on this last week as well, didn't we, Pete? But 15 million quid, we've just got to play it in for from somewhere else. I haven't looked too much about him other than the fact that he was a Sheffield United for a
Yeah.
good couple of years there, which he didn't really, light up Bramham.
Oh, they loved him there.
More than he did.
They loved him. Sheffield United absolutely loved him.
But his record there, they looked at. We've got him as a sort of 10 role,
Yeah.
not specifically out as a striker. What did you make when we first come and got this lad? Because he obviously is very well liked over at Marseille as well.
Well, I think one of the issues he had at Marseille was he was played out of position because, like you say, he's more of a a number 10 or somebody who can come in off the left,
His
like a
versatile
Richarlison type player. He's not.
thing has gone against
Yeah,
him. Yeah.
yeah, he's not an out and out centre forward or number 9, which I think is where he went wrong at Marseille. Whereas that was the position where he played him, but I think he probably does his best work when he's actually running at defenders rather than when he's got his back to goal. So I think I'm quite excited by it. Good age as well. I think he's 24. But I'd say the Sheffield United fans seem to love him. I know that we were linked with him before, or when he left Sheffield United, we were linked with him back then. I was quite disappointed that we didn't get him. So I think, yeah, he comes with it's a reasonable price, 15 million quid. I don't think that's anything to be sniffed at. I think that's a good price for a young player who can offer a lot. I think it frees us up with different options as well in terms of what we can do with Abdoulaye Doucouré. I wouldn't be surprised to see Doucouré drop a bit deeper this season if Ndiaye is playing. But yeah, it's just nice to see some business getting done early as well, isn't it? We've been linked with the lad from Hull today as well, haven't we? There's varying reports that we've agreed a fee, or that we're certainly close to agreeing that with them. Is it Philogene? I don't know how you say his name. Jaden Philogene.
Yeah.
I think that's his name.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice as well to see that you're looking further afield from Premier Leagues. I mean, look, I know we've got the lad midfield for us and things like that, which is on the deal-to-deal thing, which we've done a hell of a lot of shows on, swapping them for Dobbin effectively for financial purposes with it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I started the summer with when we're looking for players, we desperately need new players in there, Warren. That squad needs refreshing, to say the very least. It's encouraging to see Thelwell, and I would imagine Dyche hand in hand with him, looking outside of the box and thinking, the first thing I referred to at the time was the thing that was really positive for us was when Moyes went and had a look in the Championship. Look who we went and got from there with Tim Cahill. There's good players around the Championship. I think if you look at the standards in there as well, I think there are a few gems that you're looking at about there. Pete mentioned the lad at Hull there. You look at Burnley going down as well, players that are in amongst there who've got a little bit of Premier League experience about them as well. But I do have to admit there, Ndiaye coming in for us, 15 million quid is, I mean, where that's come from for us is firstly a bit of a mystery. I know everything's up in the air, what we're doing ownership wise and finance wise and whatnot. But there must be one hell of a commitment to go in and pay that much money for somebody who, let's face it, we desperately need somebody in that position. What are your thoughts in general of that?
Well, I said on Subs Weekly, I don't know too much about him. I haven't watched too
Yeah.
much of him. So in terms of me commenting on his playing ability, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know because I haven't watched a lot of football from Marseille and I didn't watch him too much at Sheffield United. What I will say though is, however he turns out, that'll be by the by. He'll either be great, he'll either be good, he'll either be indifferent. That's the story of every new signing that comes into a club. But what I like about it is it's the exact type of profile that we're looking to sign. Young player, hungry player, got a little bit of experience now, playing abroad and also playing down in the championship. And how many times, Dave, Pete, you as well, me and you have had this conversation. How many times have we said we should look towards the championship?
Yeah.
There's great talent down there. There's great players. And, don't forget as well, Dave, Jordan Moyes, I know you said Kale there. We got Lescott from down in the
Yeah.
championship as well.
Yeah.
One of the best players in the Premier League for me now is Jared Bowen, and he was a great signing for West Ham. Again, another player came from the championship. So if you can
Hull as
find
well,
the
yeah.
right ones, yeah, from Hull as well. If you can find the right ones down there, there are absolute gems down there to pick from. And I think that's where I'm encouraged that Everton are starting to go down this route because for years now we've been signing players who are 27, 28, 29 on huge wages, on big contracts. And that's been largely to our downfall. This lad here, if he doesn't do as well, then there's a bit of resale there. We can maybe recoup our money back. If he does brilliant, to the point where it's like we can't keep hold of him anymore because he's that good, because the huge clubs, the super clubs are sniffing around him. We sell him for a massive profit and we reinvest that money. It's how football is at this moment in time, and it's where we are as a club. That's the type of dealings and transfers that we should be making. So in terms of a transfer profile, I'm encouraged, but obviously we'll all have to wait and see how it turns out. I think in terms of the squad though as well, the type of player we need, you know, we still don't know what's happening with Dom yet. We don't know if he's staying, going, or whatever. But we will eventually get, I'd imagine, a replacement in for Dom. So that will happen anyway. But in terms of the players that I think we lack, a pacey, direct, potentially goal scorer, and potentially. And I mentioned this on subject as well. I think he fits. I think from what I've heard about him and how he plays, he fits very much into the Dice style. So it's an area that we've addressed, and I think credit to Thelwell for that. As I said, the jury's still out. Because I know that I listened to yourself, Matt, and Les on Blue Monday, and there was a little bit of a question raised about Thelwell's previous attacking
Yeah.
signings and how
Yeah.
they've not been, and that's fair enough. They've not been brilliant so far, but there's always room for that to change. So good to see Everton doing business early. Good to see us looking a little bit further afield than established players who you play over the mark for, getting in youth, getting in potential, and not paying massively over the odds either. So it bodes well for our transfer. What's the word I'm looking for? It bodes well for our transfer strategy, and long may it continue. And if we keep getting these bodies in, we need bodies to refresh the team. And if we can build on last season, then yeah, it's going to be brilliant going into the last season at Goodison and going into the first season at Bramley Moore.
Just to finish on Thelwell there, the point you made. I mean, I'll openly admit there, I probably went too far into saying that this fella hasn't done a good enough job for us, because you think of the mitigating circumstances around him. It's hard to say, mate. You've done your job crap when you've got nothing to spend money on. You've got deductions. You don't know if Everton are going to be a Premier League side. You've probably got all sorts of finances thrown left, right, and centre when you get an email on a Monday morning from whoever's looking after the coffers at Everton.
Deadwood, he's got out as well, Dave. We were on big wages. There's a lot of players there on big contracts, big
Yeah,
wages, and we've got them out, and we've slimlined the wage bill, and he's had a lot to do with that. So again, the jury's still out with him, of course it
yeah,
is,
of
but
course.
he's definitely done more good than bad, I'd say, up to now.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because if you look at the club releasing who all these new academy kids are and all that, and I look at that and I think, do you know what? It's nice for them to put them into the limelight. I've not really seen them do anything like that in the past, and obviously you've got Baines there who's going to be working with them as well. Look at some of these kids, and they seem obviously really enthusiastic about coming to Everton. I think it takes a big step from them to sort of stand out to the crowd and say, I'm playing for Everton's academy now. Think, when have you seen that? Do you know what I mean? Thought that was a really interesting way the club went about that. Obviously Thelwell will have a lot to do with that. I would imagine most to do that as well. Yeah, I think the jury's still out is the right comment to make about him, but he's taken a further step towards my positivity towards him, having gone and signed a player or two so far this summer. Remains to be seen what they're like. But dare to say, I mean, you enjoying watching international tournaments and Everton signing players. Weather's getting a little bit better and sunny up here. I don't know what you're like that. You look like you're sunny behind you there, Warren.
Yeah, no, it's just picked up. It was raining and windy earlier, but it's picked up now. So yeah, it's summer's here. When we were talking about it earlier, weren't we? 41 days till the start of the season, and
Yeah.
we're starting to get that little, the Euros are nearly finished, the Olympics are kicking in. The
That's it,
new
mate.
season, dare I say, do we go ahead in August and have that little bit of positivity? Dare I say it?
I know, mate. I know in the
You
transfer
can join
window
me.
still.
You can join me in the positivity.
I'm not going that far, mate. I'm not going that far. Maybe in a couple of weeks, you know, when this international rubbish is over, do you know what I mean? I like the Olympics. I've got the golf to come up as well the week after. I'll be in me prime. Then I'll start saying nice things to you. Don't act as if golf's boring. By the way, you'll be throwing loads of our listeners away. You know, everyone likes a bit of golf.
Oh,
Everyone loves Tommy
I'm
Fleetwood,
gonna
who's a
hit a
blue.
ball, then walk after it for half an hour, then hit it again. And
Mate, that's the way Everton play, though.
yeah, to be fair,
It's a ball walk after it for 30 minutes. But thanks a lot, boys. Really enjoyed it. Another Summer Weekly for everyone to listen to there. Obviously, it'll be on YouTube as well when Les puts that out. Should be later today or first thing in the morning. All the usual places you can get from us for the free weeklies. Thanks for listening to us across the summer. Loads of people getting in touch, loving it as well when they're away on the holidays, sitting next to a pool, listening to us, whatever it is. Thanks a lot for all your support, and we'll speak to you again soon. Plenty more to come as usual. More mailbags as well, which you know, always makes up your summer, whether you're having a good time, whether it's raining or whatever. It's always a good laugh, particularly with these two on it as well. See you next time. Thanks for listening, and up the toffees.